Okay, welcome back to Think Education podcast. I'm Chris Hill and joined by Judith Lammy. I can't stop it now.
No, you
It
got
just keeps.
it's going to be a thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember actually when it used to be one of the old Radio 1 DJs used to be Chris Lamington Pie or something. Like I used to get called that.
I could
And then
change.
you're a Lammy, right? It's a sweet. Right? A lammy? Isn't that from Australia, New Zealand?
Could be. I better look it up. I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be appropriate for me, given those people that know me know that I'm never usually more than 3 feet away from.
That's lamington I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of a lamington, but a lammy would be a fairly on-brand shortened version of an Australian word, right?
This is such a perfect way to begin one of our podcasts.
Complete babbling.
Yes.
Yes. All the facts are wrong.
What we had intended. However, a little bit of a discussion around language and derivation of words, and the trouble you can get into if you ever so slightly get it wrong.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, should we start again?
So anyway,
welcome back. Yes, we'll cut a bit out.
Now, don't go away. I know you're thinking of running away and running off. No, stay here. We're not just going to talk about my surname. Yes. We were thinking, weren't we, today, Christopher, that we were going to sort of pick up on just some discussion with regard to what's happening, in and around Dubai.
Yeah.
In terms of education and given the current climate and the changes or not that have been taken place, and I can tell you, dear listeners, if it is indeed plural, that Chris isn't in his t-shirt, sitting in his living room having a cup of tea today. He's in a shirt and jacket. It can mean only one thing: either he's not bothered to wash his t-shirts, or he's at work.
Yes, I am indeed.
So, it has been a few weeks since we've talked about, serious note, obviously, talked about the situation in the Middle East and how it's been affecting what's happening at, your university, other universities, schools, colleges, etc. As well as obviously the bigger picture, but then thinking about how it's affecting the, educational landscape there, and it looks as though things have changed in the last little while. So what's happening?
So yes, things have changed, and as you said about the environment, it's got hotter again this week, which kind of came out of almost out of nowhere, because we'd actually had some really pleasant couple of weeks, and so yes, in more ways than one. As of Monday past, so that would have been Monday the 20th of April, the ministry announced the return and opening of schools and universities. They announced it obviously before the Monday, but so at some point last week it was announced. There was kind of a staggered approach in that all schools and all universities had to comply with very strict, stringent safety protocols, evacuation plans, staff training. So even if the ministry said schools and universities are ready, can be opened, it was still can be opened pending approval of the and checking of the plans. So that includes shelter in place rooms, it includes staff training, it includes all the stuff you would hope to see, and it was also staggered in a sense that the schools, the educational facilities were opened as of Monday, teachers were back as of Monday, but students were still afforded the option for online delivery.
Okay.
Because many many universities had kind of pre-extended that online period until some point in May, when the exam period would happen, or in some cases, some universities, because they have different break processes, were still on break and therefore wouldn't come. So, it's not 100% uniform in terms of the day people came back, but the provision for universities and schools to open. So my university was actually already going to be open on Monday. We'd already got approval for kind of a phased return, where we would have had, right, hybrid options, and then the full opening was announced. We were kind of a little ahead of that curve, and so we've
just
opened.
Quickly jumping in, do you have
to
get because of your university, does it have to get any other sort of governance approvals to go? I'm just thinking of the Canadian link. Does it ever need that kind of approval as well?
So no, I mean, obviously we have a board of trustees, and we have that level of governance, but we're not a branch campus of a Canadian university, so we're not governed in the same way. But we do have there's a board who sit almost entirely in Canada, and therefore we are obviously accountable to. But no, from that perspective, it was conversations with the chancellor. I wasn't in these conversations, but it was conversations with the chancellor here and with the ministry, and then supported by all the necessary safety training, etc., etc. And so we've been open since Monday, so this is day 5. Students in all universities that are open and not on break are offering still the hybrid model, and also part of that is to allow for the fact that some of the faculty members of universities would have still been out of the country, because their expectation would have been kind of in that indefinite holding pattern, and if they were teaching online and they were able to do that from their home countries, then that was that. Obviously you have to allow time for people to come back, for flight availability, costing, etc., etc. And so we are back. Obviously we had the additional issue where the ceasefire was going to end on kind of the Wednesday of this week. So there was still some uncertainty as to what might happen. There still exists a degree of uncertainty, fueled by tweets that come out on a daily basis as to what is going to happen. Obviously, the strait is still closed, so there's still, considerable disruption. But for our day-to-day reality, it seems strange that we can't say we're back to normal, because we're not back to normal, but we are back to some form of normality. And so that's kind of where we are, with obviously with the hope that continues, right? And once the current semester or the current term ends and the new term begins, my guess would be that all learning is back to face-to-face. I would assume that ministries will kind of make that shift, and then we will be back to normal.
And most of your students still, do your students live near the campus? Some of them on the campus, or
so
a mixture?
A mixture. So we do have student accommodation, 5-minute bus ride away from the campus, and yes, some students do live there. Dubai is kind of a strange thing for international students, because you're only counted as international if you fly here directly to start your degree, not if you were living here previously. Whereas most private foreign universities, our student populations would be in the 90-something percentile of non-Emirati students. Therefore, certainly by like a HESA statistic, would be international students, but they're not counted as international because they're resident.
Yes.
So, and because they're resident, that typically means they are here with their families. right? And in some cases, some of them would have been born here, or like my daughter, grown up here. So from that perspective, many students, not just for our university, but for many universities, even if they were living in student accommodation or rented accommodation in the kind of closer to their university, when we went into online learning, many went home to their family homes within the Emirates. So, for obviously varieties of reasons, but and many did indeed stay in the student accommodation. And we talked about that a couple of sessions ago about the physical interaction that they were able to have. So there aren't, we're nowhere near full student capacity back yet. Many students in the country are still taking advantage of the online model. As there remains, a couple of weeks left before kind of the exam period, end of term semester type natural break. At which point, obviously, as I said, my guess is we'll revert back to the standard delivery model.
So I suppose the situation that you've got, coupled with heat, natural heat, what does it actually feel like there? I mean, is it because I just always reminded of when I used to be there, in particular when I was working there with Middlesex, and you wouldn't always feel particularly vibrant on some campuses in the middle of summer, because I mean, it would when you got into the buildings.
Yes.
But actually going between buildings, you could be forgiven for looking out and thinking that nothing was happening, but then it was 40 odd degrees outside, so it's natural, isn't it? Whereas when you're in the buildings, there was sort of a lot of activity going on. What is it like at the moment? Is it a bit of a hybrid itself there too?
It is. I mean, it's only just cracked 40, right? So it's not what we're going to get to. It's just we've had the mildest, actually I think I've been here 10 years, and I think the mildest spring that I can remember. And I was joking with my wife. It's like, yep, those 8 weeks that we spent sat indoors or playing in the garden, the weather for driving for school drop-off or pickup or going to work or walking between buildings was absolutely perfect, as opposed to what it will become. But I mean, yeah, it's not hot by our standards yet. It's just warmer than it has been. But there's still people walking around. My campus is downtown. There's, it's nowhere near as busy as it was, 2 months ago. But the city itself is filling back up again, and you're starting to see more and more evidence. At the moment, the traffic is normal, which is nice. That won't remain.
Normal for Dubai when it comes to traffic.
Yeah. So it only takes me at the moment the time that it would take you to drive that distance. I don't have any additional 30 to 40 to 60 to 90 minutes, sometimes depending on the time of day. So that's fine. I mean, it's and to be fair, this was true during the period at the beginning of the war, where if I had to go to a supermarket or I had to go for rehab for my foot or whatever, I'd still see people sitting outside in cafes and terraces, walking their dogs, jogging. The human resilience is it's interesting because I mean I have a tea towel in my office at the Keep Calm and Carry On, that was used in Britain, particularly during the Second World War. And I have a lot of colleagues and acquaintances here who are from Lebanon, for whom they're like, oh yeah, that's quaint. And it's like they've just gone on with this their entire life, right? It just becomes, and certain things become, a lot of it is context, a lot of it is perspective, a lot of it is the confidence that you have in your environment and the structures that support you, whether it's things like flow of food or shortages or, we haven't had that here, so daily life has been massively altered, but in many ways it's been, protected. So that's been, that's obviously been, that's been great. Although my first day back in the office, I was sat at my table where I am now, and I was chatting to one of my colleagues, Sumaya Asker, who will be, a contributor for our upcoming book. And we were sort of just chatting about our experiences over the period. And she lives downtown, so her experience is quite different from mine. And one of the ceiling tiles in my office had come down because they were cleaning the AC ducts. And so there's a gentleman on a ladder, props it back up, and he walks out, and we're still chatting. About 5 minutes later, the latch comes undone, and the ceiling tile flaps open and bangs against the wall and makes a banging noise. And we instantaneously had the same reaction. Like I could see it on her face, mirrored what I was exactly feeling. My heart rate went up, and the fear, like that PTSD was still, and we sort of went, okay, that was weird. So yeah, yeah, and yet, I mean, we had, like all schools and universities, we've all had our training and we've had our drills, and yeah, that's so, from that perspective, you are, you're comforted, or I guess maybe not the right word, but there has been an impact, right? There has been a mark left.
That you only realise when something like that happens, which is actually nothing to do with what it, but it could be.
No, exactly.
Yes, you then
exactly.
both have that
exactly.
reaction.
Yeah,
Yes. I'm sure somebody was had a word within maintenance, dear listeners, about that afterwards.
Oh, it's been properly taped now.
I bet. Yeah, I bet now you were up there going, right, somebody passed me the sellotape. It's going back up. Although, as with a lot of things, sometimes there's a learning there, isn't there? So quite a good thing to happen from that point of view.
If that's the worst that there is, then I'm very, very fortunate. Yeah.
But we did talk at the beginning, didn't we, as well, or when you just sort of gone into it, and you touched upon it then about sort of infrastructure and changes and things, and of course that is happening external to you, and maybe we can come on to that in a moment, but you also did talk about the communication flow from the government in particular, and from the universities and other areas, and how excellent that was, how the information was there, you were getting that information in lots of different formats for different people, but there was a commonality of information, and that was coming through. Again, as we've said before, to those of you that are listening, we're also looking at how this is pertinent and useful when we think of education, when we think of those key things that are really important for people, whatever the context or whatever is happening. It brings to the forefront, doesn't it, some of those things that you realize are particularly important, and communication was one of those. So has that been some, again, we've referred back a bit to COVID, didn't we? And I remembered when we were here in the UK, and we were getting these briefings from the government every day, which I'm not sure whether it necessarily was as comforting as other things, although the experts that were there, when it came to the health experts, they were, there was a lot of faith put in them, and they were extremely good. But we got used to that, and it was good because you actually got from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what was happening, and so you thought, okay, well, they've said that, and at a certain point you have to believe certain people, because what else are you going to do? But certainly when you've got the people who are in charge saying things, and you can see them saying it, you're thinking, all right, I feel comforted with that. But I guess as well, when it was at COVID, there was less opportunity for some of the different types of misinformation that you might get now, that that we probably didn't get so much then as you might get at points that we've got at the moment. So what's that been like for you in terms of that communication? And has it been quite systematic, either through your university or from the governments as well?
Yes, it has. It's been consistent. systematic, structured. And as you say, I mean, when you get that sort of information, you can agree with it or disagree with it, right? You can have a response based on intellectual understanding or personal fear or whatever it might be.
Yep.
But at least, as long as the message remains consistent, and you can see kind of an inherent logic in what is being done, and when the message has been, consistent from everybody, schools, universities, government, it's that the safety of the student is paramount.
Yeah.
So decisions, the second sentence that immediately follows that is while maintaining learning outcome, and student experience, right? So it's not a case of, oh, well, we'll just let a month of education slide to keep people safe, which you could still argue would be not a bad position to take.
Yeah.
It's always been the primary point is the safety of the students, and by association the staff, like teachers, facilities, etc. And then therefore the responsibility and accountability of ensuring that the learning experience and quality outputs. Some cases that's obviously had to mean adaptation, because in-person exams couldn't happen. So, universities either had, and schools had to shift to sometimes online, or sometimes changing kind of assessments in line with ministry expectations and guidelines. Sometimes, of course, it's about staff training. Sometimes it's, there's a lot of different components, but that has been consistently the message. There have been different responses from within the GCC. So not all countries in the GCC have responded in the same manner at the same time. We still have countries that have online learning ongoing. But the UAE, as I said before, despite having had more things aimed and thrown at it than any other country, including Israel, has weathered the storm, has earned confidence, right, in its ability to. And of course, we are in an indefinite ceasefire, right? So, the environment has shifted, and having shifted, and with the confidence of the infrastructure, let's get people back in the classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a logical, progression. And for some kids, so it had been like 7 weeks outside of school. It's a really long time. What's been interesting, particularly at university level, is we're seeing, kind of that renewed interest from students for online learning that we saw towards the tail end of COVID. While also, and I think probably we talked about this before, lessened by the fact that they were still socially mobile, whereas in COVID they weren't. And so online learning was kind of a lifeline, but they yearned for the social interaction of a class.
Yeah.
Now we've got that different model where you can still be socially engaged and then learn online. So
that's what we talked about the last time, didn't we? Particularly when we were talking about community, because certainly I was, of the perception that might not have been taking place, or was not. I didn't know, but that was a concern, if you will. So, it was good to hear that wasn't, and I suppose that's even more facilitated even more now, isn't it? Because you are back to some form of teaching. I mean, it must be tricky for those subjects that you've got, lab subjects or other types of subjects where, I mean, everything can benefit from face-to-face. Of course it can. But there are some things that you can do much more easily, remotely out there. And there are other things that are very, very difficult to do remotely. So
absolutely. And I mean, and I think having done all three types, the face-to-face, the hybrid, and the fully online, hybrid is by far the hardest, where you might be physically in a classroom with a percentage of your students and the other percentage are online. I remember during the tail end of it, as we were emerging from COVID, you couldn't have more than, there was a certain capacity for people within a room, obviously because of the distancing. And I remember at my old university, you know, you'd have a lecturer in one room with X number of students, and the others would be in another room on campus, but without a professor. So online, but physically. And you know, so then you've got a teacher teaching to a room of people, and through a computer to a room of other people who don't have a teacher, right? It's a very other set and specific skill set, hybrid teaching, which is less about the provision and the infrastructure, because you know that exists, but it's that capability to teach across the space and time, while maintaining kind of an equal, you know, experience for the students, which is, you know, is really difficult to achieve.
That's the bit I was going to ask about. Yes, because I can imagine that you know, the technology means that you can do it, doesn't it?
Sure.
You can see
Yes.
things, and okay, you might be better if you can actually see it there and it's 10 feet away from you. But actually, you know, technology is so good. People have screens that are so big, it's so clear that, you know, sometimes, you know, you can see things probably better when you're remote than you can when you're there, for some people, if they've got the back of the classroom. But as actually, and as a teacher or as a lecturer, to ensure that you're trying to have the students have the same sort of interactions, and that you're paying attention. So you're actively, aren't you, trying to sometimes make sure that you're paying attention to those that are remote. That, you know, it's a little bit like, although obviously not as crucial in terms of what you're doing, but like when you're having meetings, and you've got meetings, I've had lots of meetings in the past where they've been hybrid, and you've got people in the room with you, and you've got people online, and every now and then you have to remind yourself, don't you, that you've got people online. Now it's easier if there's huge big screens and you've got people there, but even so, I mean, how many times in that situation will somebody have said, oh, by the way, so and so's got their hand up, and you're like, yeah, I missed that little like orange hand there, or that little yellow hand. That's just a little example, but you know, if you're teaching, even more so. I mean, it would be interesting maybe to get a teacher on to talk to us at some point about how they found that kind of work. We are going to be looking in our book, aren't we, about how teaching and learning styles have adapted and changed over the years. And this will be a good example. But as you say, sometimes it's much easier, isn't it, if you're within one parameter or other. If everything's online, you do things like X, and it's that natural instinct and reaction to things, isn't it, that you have. Your brain just says, fine, I'm online, I'm operating like this. Same as when you're face to face. When you're trying to do both, your brain's going, oh, hang on a minute, I thought I was working here, there, and now I'm doing something else. So it must be naturally quite a challenging thing to do from that point of view.
It is, and I'm not upset that I haven't had to do it again this time round. But yeah, you know, when you've got like one or two people with you in the room, and you can look in their eyes and they can look at you, and you can see them going, oh, don't ask me again, like, you know, and then you got to, you know, it's well, I mean, I remember being in, you know, this would be kind of 2008, 2009, you know, when I was with Nottingham in Malaysia, and we were having meetings between the Malaysia, China, and UK campuses. And typically, Malaysia would be two of us, and China would be two of them, and England would be, I don't know, 30. All sat around, you know, a U-shaped table, all engaging, you know, back when you could still eat biscuits in meetings. Well, not could, when you were capable of, because they were provided. And yeah, we were just sort of sitting there going, you know, waving and
hello.
And I remember at one point, you know, just before the meeting was about to start, one of the chair of the UK campus sort of, you know, almost like, oh, looked at, oh, right, oh, you're joining us as well, are you? Oh, okay. And there's two of you. Is that two? And the senior academic on the China campus was like, it's all right, we'll wait if you want to go get more. We're fine with two. If you need more people in your meeting, we'll wait. But we're good with the two of us. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That kind of you know, very much a soft skill about, you know, I mean, it's possibly more managing than it is leading. But you know, how you chair meetings. I mean, yes, in person, how you chair them, you know, at distance, how you chair them over technology, where accents come into play, volume of voice comes into play, quality of technology comes into play, cultural expression, et cetera, et cetera. These are all, they're all very, I don't think it's very glaringly obvious when it's done badly. And I think when it's done really well, we don't necessarily appreciate it until you get to the end and go, oh wow, that chair was brilliant. Like that, that was just done. That was done really, really well.
It's usually in the next one when you have somebody who
when you have the opposite.
So, you're like, I've just realised how good that other one is because this one isn't.
Yeah.
I've just gone. I've made myself a cup of tea. I've come back. Nobody noticed.
Yes. Yeah.
Put a little face on the screen. Nobody cared. Nobody asked.
Actually, so like along the lines of that example, I think what we've particularly, what I can speak of for here, have experienced in the last sort of 2 months, can definitely be seen as a progressional improvement from what we experienced during COVID.
Yes.
Because there are still teachers who, of all levels who still need, tech training and ed tech training and etc. And yes, there are still students that need training and teaching and how to learn with technology because it's a different skill set, but the overall capability of the educational infrastructure to learn and teach digitally has improved from COVID.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's going to be the only way we go forward, but our capability, our infrastructure, our processes, policies, et cetera, right? They're all moving in the right direction. And what I think that allows us to do is have a greater sense of confidence for not if, when this is required again, because it will be, and I'm not talking uniquely about Dubai, but there will be another circumstance somewhere that requires this immediate transition. But also, I think if we think about it responsibly, we have an opportunity to maybe diversify and play with the learning delivery system a little bit, to get a little maybe creative or innovative in what we do. So to harness the best bits and use them in the best times, and then I think adapt. I think that would be quite interesting, because after COVID we kind of just went backwards. We said, well, we're done with that. Thank goodness we never have to do it again. It's like, well, yeah, let's not do COVID again, sure, but
well, we did it in a certain way just to get us by, didn't we?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And, rather than thinking, actually, this kind of just accelerated us down a certain path, means that you can be retaining all the best bits of everything that you're doing.
Absolutely.
But it's given you other opportunities, given you much more flexibility. So in a way, another one of these things that, where there's been a benefit to something that happened in the past.
Quite right.
And but I've seen that can actually be something that can help shape and develop in a very positive way what any learning delivery is like, and any learning commitment might be, and then the learning outcomes, because that is also the world in which people are going into, lest we forget.
Absolutely.
And therefore providing that opportunity when they're at school and then at colleges and universities, can only be of benefit, can't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, and the more you integrate different aspects, the more you support different aspects, the more you train towards different aspects. A shift doesn't become a wholesale shift. It becomes kind of a gradual pivot to, just raise the focus on different areas. So again, it's a completely different environment and situation than it was during the COVID lockdown. In many ways better, right? In terms of the social mobility, in many ways the same, and in many ways worse in terms of the fear or the external impact. But you live through something, you adapt, you realize you can get through it, and you keep going, right? It's because what's the alternative?
What's the alternative? Absolutely. Absolutely. And just get your ceiling tiles sorted out, and that helps your blood pressure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's funny because that was specifically done because they were cleaning the AC ducts. Like it was something working in my favor. Like it's my office is going to be more habitable, but that was such a that was such an interesting in the moment. Like,
Yes,
oh, that
at
was,
the moment.
oh yeah, that was very, very telling. Yeah.
So normal, but not normal,
Yes, yeah, same, but
as
different.
we've said. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we did think, didn't we, that maybe every month or so we would just have this kind of conversation in particular, you know, to focus on what's happening, particularly with yourself and the teams there. You
Mm.
know, we're hoping that this isn't going to be the kind of conversation that we're going to have for too much longer, but
No,
we don't know.
but the nature of the conversation, you know, heavily reflective, I think is something that that's what I mean. I really loved about our initial conversations way back in COVID, before we thought of the podcast together, or before we were kind of even really writing together. It was an outlet for reflective discussion.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, having worked in kind of the PGCHE professional development support of a lot of academics most of my career, that doesn't exist very or as explicitly as it could do, right? You know, academia tends to be a bit of a treadmill, and we follow the same cycle, and we make the same mistakes every year, and you know, when we rush and we get the same things finished, and then we like take a breath and then we start again. And it's less about planning or reflecting and more about firefighting and responding. And I mean, it's a form of therapy. In all
Yes.
honesty, right? I've
Yeah.
had this as a form of therapy for almost 6 years, I guess, because we started
6 years.
summer of so
Definitely.
and I think that's, you know, I think that's a really healthy, valuable, bringing it back to what you said at the beginning, moving education into a sense of community rather than competition.
Yes.
Right, because, you know, people at this, you know, kind of sector, this experience, it's like, yeah, we should talk to each other. And how did you cope, and what did you do, and, you know, how do we manage? And, you know, yeah, I think it's a useful, it can be a very useful tool. So yeah, I mean, I like you, yes, I would really like it to not be anywhere war adjacent. Right? That would be really
Yes.
nice. But you know, there have been positives that have come out of it. Selfishly, I got to spend, you know, 8 weeks in a house again with my wife and daughter, you know, uninterrupted, you know, and yeah, bits and pieces of frustration here and there, and online learning, and et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, yeah, that's what I love the most. I love the most about COVID, is such a stupid statement. But yeah, it was just that, you know, being able to be with family.
There
You
are
know, if
always some good things that
there
come
are,
out of some
there
things,
are,
aren't there? There just are, you
yeah,
know, sometimes more than others, but there is always something that, and you know, with distance, sometimes you can see that more easily,
yes,
particularly if
yeah,
the negatives were very strong at the time, and that could be the case with COVID, wouldn't it? So only looking back, you think, you know what, actually, I quite liked it when I went out and I had those walks to the park and I fed the ducks that I'd never done in the other
mm,
25 years I'd lived somewhere, sort of thing. And it's the same in this situation, isn't it? There are negatives, and sometimes, you know, you can focus so much on those. And when you're right in the middle of something, sometimes it's very, very difficult to be reflective about it because you're experiencing it at the same time.
yeah,
So, you know, all power to you as well, that you're doing that too. Not only are you in it, but you're also experiencing it, and you're reflecting on it, and you're sharing it with the rest of us as well, which I think is really useful. So it might be useful for you and therapeutic for you, but I think it's very beneficial for the rest of us too.
yeah. No,
So
I
the
mean,
reflection will always continue. We just hope that it will be in
oh, I'm
a
happy to
slightly different
reflect about
reason.
other things.
Yes,
Absolutely,
let's
yeah,
reflect about other stuff.
yeah.
That would be
Yes,
quite nice.
that
Yeah.
would be good.
We do have some guests coming up in the next few weeks on the podcast for colleagues listening. So that should be interesting for people as well. More on that
As it
at a
well, not as
later
it unfolds,
date.
because we do know, but yes, let's build up the
We do
suspense.
actually know. Yes, we're not. Yeah,
They're not just random people with
no,
pulling it off the
we're not
street.
just saying, "Hey, you come here, talk to us on the podcast." No, we do have some guests coming up, talking about a variety of different things. So we look forward to talking to them. in the not too far distant future. In the meantime, Chris, stay safe.
And you watch out for the ducks.